Hi, and thank you for joining our continued lectures on democratizing the cloud. On today's journey, we'll be showing a very basic startup application. We'll basically be building it from scratch and showing you how you can set up a website, basically starting from zero. One thing that you are going to need to do is you are going to need to go to Azure. So just portal.azure.com to sign up for Azure. And once you're signed up, you should be able to create a simple website, basically for free. So let's go ahead and let's do the first thing you need to do in order to create any kind of resource inside of Azure is you need to put it into what's called a resource group. So let's go ahead and click add. And then we will basically select a subscription. So when you join Azure, you'll be given a subscription, and you can create multiple subscriptions in Azure that you can use to handle multiple different things. All of them will show up based on the email that you've used to sign in. Basically give your resource group a name. So I'm going to call it Labs, right? I'll call it Demo Labs. And then you pick a region. So Azure has multiple regions worldwide, globally, that all these resources can run on. So theoretically, I could be here in the US, create resources, basically deploy those resources to a region in Nigeria, in the southwest part of Nigeria, and people in Lagos will be able to access my Azure resources much faster than they would if they have to come all the way here to Eastern US to access them. So for things like static content, you might imagine that that having the content, videos, and things like that closer to the place where they're going to be streamed from, there's a value proposition to that. So that's the idea around regions. They also give you a way for you to add a level of redundancy and stability to applications that you build on Azure, because you can basically have fallbacks in other regions. So when there are failures in one region, which does happen, let's say East US, something happens and it fails, you can still, if you've had some kind of failover, if you've had something set up where it will fall back to a different, to a version of your application running on another region, even if it's just a static page that says, hey, we're down for a while, you can use these regions to set that up. So let's go ahead and let's create this app service. And it's very fast. I'm sorry, not this app service, this resource group. Once created, we can go into it, and this is what it's going to look like in terms of a resource group. We're not going to go into all the things here. We'll have other videos where we basically dive into some more of that, what they mean, and show how they work. But we welcome you to look at all the other resources that are out there around cloud services and Azure, and reach out if you have any questions. So next, what we're going to do is we're going to create a very basic web application. So let's go ahead and click add, and we basically want to create a web app. So we want that web app to be in this resource group that we just created called Demo Labs. We can give the web app a name. So Demo Labs 1. Okay. So let's call it Demo Labs Public. Okay. You can decide whether or not you're going to be using a container or code. Some people already have their code base set up in Docker containers, so they can just deploy the web app that way. For most of us, we're using code. You can also pick the runtime stack. So as you can see, you have quite a bit of choice in terms of like how you want to run this application on Azure. So for us, we're going to be using .NET Core. You can pick the operating system, so you can run .NET Core on Linux or on Windows, which is pretty cool. And you can, once again, pick the region for this. So I'm going to maintain the same region. And then over here is where you pick your plan, right? So What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new plan. So labs ASP. So ASP stands for App Service Plan. And then by default, of course, it defaults to premium. Make sure you click to change the size. And when you go in here, you see that premium V2 is $146 a month, so relatively expensive. This is an estimate. If you get a lot of traffic going to your site, it could go up more. We don't need all that, so I'm going to bring it down to dev test, and I'm going to go shared infrastructure, 60 minutes per day compute, and select that one because it is totally free. Click apply. Then you go over to monitoring. For now, we're not going to do anything with monitoring. Monitoring, I mean, you can research using App Insights. It basically allows you to monitor your applications for errors and things of that nature. I'm going to leave that blank. We're also not going to put any tags in there, but tags here work like tags anywhere else. You're basically it tags your application with some metadata that you can use to find it later on. When you're doing searches up top here, you can use tags to do this, to run the search. Once you're done, simply click create. And you're off to the races. What that's going to do is it's going to basically create an app service for you that will have a URL that you can access on the cloud. So it's as simple as this to get this going. It's almost done here. While this is going on, what we're going to do is we're going to flip over to the other side and look at how do we put something into this app service that's sitting on the cloud. So as you can see, it's completed. So I can click on go to resource. That brings me here. And while I'm inside of the resource, I can actually click on browse right there, which will pop out. And as you can see, it creates a website for me called demolabs-public.azurewebsites.net. This is the basic site that you get completely free. So there's someone that's charging you tons and tons, for hosting. Know that you can easily host on Azure for zero or next to nothing, even if you go a couple of steps up in very few clicks, as you've seen. So let's go ahead and let's now go to the next phase of it, which is creating an actual website on top of this. Now, we're not going to do anything crazy. We're going to take a very boilerplate website and basically just publish it here. But what you should be taking from this is that you can actually create an app service, set it all up, and then you can have your second suppliers or your contractors or whoever publish content to that app service. You can create security roles for them all here, access control or whatever, to allow them to be able to basically publish to your app service, and you are essentially hosting it in Azure. So you don't necessarily have to have them host it for you, which typically is far more expensive than it needs to be. So for the purpose of deploying, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use Visual Studio. There's a lot of ways that you can deploy code onto your app service, but I'm not going to use all that. What I'm going to do is basically just create a new project. And I'm going to be using a technology called Blazor to do this. There are, again, a lot of ways that you can do this. But for the purpose of this, let's just do Blazor because it gives you a pretty good boilerplate. So we go to create it. And for the purposes of this, I will be creating a Blazor WebAssembly application, not a standard Blazor application. Okay. Click on create. And what this is going to do is basically put together the framework for this site that we're going to be publishing, right? And so here's the site that we're going to be publishing. Just flipping over so you can see here's how the site looks on Azure right now. So I'm just going to run this application as it stands without any changes. Just give it a minute to get going, to warm up. Okay, there we go. So it started. And the site is launched now. Here's how it looks when it runs locally on my machine, right? So it's just loading up, taking its time. There we go, right? So here's the basic site. So as you can see, it says localhost, which means my machine. And you can go over the counter and you can click on the counter. You can fetch data, right? I think it fetches the same data every single time. Each time you refresh, it pulls it down. So this is the basic site that we've created. We're not going to change it at all. Now we're just going to go into publishing it. Now, how do you publish it from Visual Studio? You can click on this Connect to Cloud, publish your app to Azure. This page you may disappear, so you may not see it in future. Publishing you can do by selecting the project that you want to publish when it's a web application, clicking on publish. And then from here, you say what you want to publish to. So as you can see, you can publish to a Docker, you can publish to a folder, you can publish to an FTP server. Notice over here that we have some FTP addresses located here. So if that's your cup of tea, you can use that approach. You can publish to a web server. So this will publish to an IIS server somewhere using web deploy. IIS is the old technology, a web server, old technology for basically hosting web applications. In that model, you would have a VM and a virtual machine or a machine, a computer of some kind. And in that computer, you have a server that listens for requests from the cloud. And basically, you can publish to it using this. So for legacy applications, they can use that approach. For us, though, we're going to use Azure. And then, of course, we're publishing to an Azure App Service. Notice that here you can also publish to a virtual machine, which is a computer running on the cloud. But in this case, we're going to publish to an app service, Windows App Service, which is what we just created. The next step is over here, based on what you have, based on what you've done, you should be able to. Based on your sign-in, it should show you what's available for you inside of Azure. So in this case, we are looking at Demo Labs, which is the resource group we created. Each of these folders corresponds to a resource group. If I go over here, I can quickly show you, go to my resource groups. And you'll notice that there's a lot here. But note that that some of these are in a different subscription, so they would not show up. And this is tied to one specific subscription. And also it's listing the resource groups that have app services that have already been targeted there. So let's go into Demo Lab, and here's Demo Labs Public. We select that, we click on Finish. And basically it's all set. Next step is then to just simply click the publish button. Clicking the publish button will build the application, which is basically compile it locally, and it will create all the publishing resources. Then it will then deploy those resources to the web. And if you watch our video on using Azure DevOps, which is another tool for doing this on the cloud, basically it shows how you can do this from Azure, right? So in that approach, you would basically have a Git repository, you check it into your Git repository, and then you'd have some builds running at your Git repository that basically publish. So here we go, this is done. As you can see, we're now looking at demolabs.azurewebsites.net. Right. So let me see. Yeah, so yeah, we're just looking at the same thing here. So here's demo labs here, here's demo labs here. So I'm gonna just refresh it, right? And as you can see, it loads the application. So basically very straightforward, relatively quickly with no time. You can take you can create an app service and you can take an application that you've created and you can publish it to that app service. And I do want to mention that I'm using a specific technology here to do this, but these could just be flat files. These could really be anything. So if you have some static content, it's very easy to publish that static content and then continue to publish that static content as needed. So what I'm now going to do just to finish it off is I'm going to go over to pages. I'm going to go over to this index and it says here, hello world. Okay, so I'm just going to add another line underneath it that says, we are cloud. Okay, and then I'm just going to build that. Actually, I'm not going to build it. I'm just going to once again publish it, just so you can see how easy it is. So what you note here, the first time it publishes a whole bunch of the static content that's needed for the site to run. But in future publishing points, if you don't change any of the static content itself, again, in this particular sample, if you have binaries and you don't change any of the static content itself, then all it has to do is just publish the binaries, right? As you can see, it is essentially done. So if I go back here, you can see it says, hello world, we are democratizing the cloud. Go here, this hasn't been changed, refresh it. Hello world, we are democratizing the cloud. So hopefully this gives you a quick, brief view of how to publish applications to the cloud, how to set up an app service, how to quickly do a publish of that app service. Again, if you have any questions, you can reach out to me at Edward Momeka. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, and you can email me as well. Reach out to me and I can respond to you. Please, if you like the content, subscribe, like the video. It helps us out so we can continue to create content for you, and hope you have a blessed day.